hello and welcome to Binge Watch, the podcast where we take a look at the hottest new TV and film releases on streaming television platforms. I'm Hannah Fernando, the group editor of Woman and Home magazine.
Yes, she is, and I'm Ian McEwen, writer on TV Satellite Week, TV Times, What's on TV and whatstowatch.com. And today we're looking at the new releases that will be available on Friday the 16th of May 2025, including Alexander Skarsgard playing a free-thinking cyborg in the sci-fi action comedy Murderbot on Apple TV+, and a fourth season of football docu-series Welcome to Wrexham, featuring Hollywood stars turned football club owners Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney on Disney+.
And we'll also be checking out Channel 4 streaming's crime drama Long Bright River and going inside our minds with Chris Packham on BBC iPlayer.
But before we start, a little bit of news about some upcoming productions. Brenda Blethyn will play a woman of substance in the Channel 4 adaptation of Barbara Taylor Bradford's novel. What else is in the news, Hannah?
And Shaun the Sheep will be back for a new adventure, like what I did there, in The Beast of Mossy Bottom on Sky.
That was good. We're going to start on Disney Plus with the return of Welcome to Wrexham. And here's a clip.
Over the last 4 years, it's been this roller coaster of magic.
We are all dreaming of another promotion.
Can you do it again?
Back-to-back promotions.
It's never been done before.
The sort of stuff that fairy tales are made of.
Season 4 of this one, Hannah, and I'm sure most people will be aware of it, but if you're not, it's all about Wrexham Football Club and their history since they were bought by Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney in 2020, at which point, I mean, they're a very historic club. They're 150 years old, and they dropped out of the Football League, so they were down at their lowest ebb. And then across the first 3 seasons, they got promoted twice. So they came back into the Football League and then got promoted again. And this 4th season, they're seeing if they can achieve, as they say, back-to-back-to-back promotions. And that would mean that they'd come, if they manage it, they would come all the way up to the 2nd tier, the Championship. And who knows, maybe the Premier League does await. Now, it's one of those, a bit like Drive to Survive and the other sports documentary series. Everything that's in this season has already happened, of course. So if you're a football fan, you probably will know what happened to Wrexham over the past season. But I'm not going to spoil it for you non-football fans out there because it's a pretty exciting ride. But this is a great series, I think, because it doesn't focus exclusively on Ryan and Rob, which I think it easily could, and it doesn't even focus just on the club and the players. It's about the community as well. So, for instance, in episode 1, as well as the guys having a meeting about, are we just going to consolidate? Would that be the best thing to do, or should we throw some money at it and try and achieve this 3rd successive promotion? So they're planning a strategy, but meanwhile there's a long interview with this young woman who she started a business, like a sort of coffee shop inside a horse box, and she is selling coffees and snacks inside the ground. So it's things like that. They talk to the fans, they talk to people who are, just people who are doing all sorts of stuff in Wrexham, and you get just a real sense of the community. And I mean, if you wrote this as a film script, people would say, that's ridiculous, no one's going to believe that. But it's actually happening. So Wrexham AFC, it's just the most heartwarming, inspiring story. It really is a football fairy tale, and you don't need to be a football fan to enjoy this. It's just an absolute delight. Hannah, are you now a Wrexham fan?
Yes, Welcome to Wrexham. It's a funny one, Ian, isn't it? Because you're quite right that you almost expect it to focus on Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, because they're the stars of the show, I suppose. And I think it's right and proper that they kind of don't. But let's not forget that the superpower of these people and the money has really sort of captured this club, hasn't it? And, you know, it has got a history, this club, and anybody that loves this sport will know about it. I don't think you need to love the sport to watch it. It goes back to that same old thing that we talk about with documentaries about, you know, if it's football or whatever it might be that you do or don't like. I don't think you have to like that here. This is just a really interesting and incredible story, really, isn't it? And the fact that we are, I think it's the 4th season, just shows that there is an appetite for more. There's lots of emotion in it, which I think is really nice, and I think that sort of appeals to everybody. I don't think this is male centric at all. And you know, they start their campaign, don't they, to become the first club to gain 3 promotions in consecutive seasons. And you're on side, even if you're not a supporter, you're just on side. So I think it is definitely one to watch.
And now for something completely different, we move across to Apple TV Plus for a new sci-fi comedy called Murderbot. And here's a clip.
I am a security unit, or sec unit. I was built to protect and obey humans, and humans are idiots. But now that I've hacked my programming, I can do whatever I want, as long as they don't find out.
Yes, Apple TV Plus is back at its best as usual. Great production here. It's a pretty sinister sounding name, isn't it, Murderbot? And it's a pretty sinister, at times quite creepy watch, really, because it's a sci-fi comedy and there are some sort of comedic lines in there. For, you know, the script is a bit comedic in places. It's dry comedy, I would say, you know, so there's kind of just saying something, and if it lands with you, it does, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I think some people will like it, some people won't. I thought it was quite funny in places. But actually, the undercurrent of this it is just this sort of sci-fi, but also quite creepy sci-fi. So it's based on the novels by Martha Wells, and it's a 10-part series. And it's set in the, you know, very, very distant future. Although with AI, I think all of us kind of have these kind of fears and worries that any moment in time our life could be ruled by bots. And it's a time when humans have colonised the solar system. So this kind of interstellar travel is very common, very usual. It happens. And cyborgs are used for all kinds of tasks. So the bots, basically, they are used instead of people, and that's the fear, right, that they're going to take our jobs. So these bots are there looking after your security, construction, moving things. They're capable of absolutely anything. But there's a security cyborg. It's called Sec Unit, and it overrides the programming. And again, how many times do you hear with AI, for example, oh, the bot's a bit cleverer than we thought it was. Oh, it's learned a bit more, a bit quicker than we thought it would. This kind of plays on those sorts of emotions, I think. And these bots, these Sec units, are programmed to obey orders from humans. But what happens when they can override that and they don't have to obey your orders? Well, things change, including the idea that these bots might have emotions, which is even kind of weird. And now this particular bot gives itself the name Murderbot, and is absolutely aware that if anyone finds out about the fact that they know about freedom and they don't have to do what they're told, then this could really be a bit of a problem for the human world. And this is what this is about. That's the kind of fundamental start of where this is. And so you can see how humans are kind of like, they catch on a bit like, it knows, this is a bit odd, I've noticed something a bit strange, but seems to care. And it's really quite scary, and it's looking at you, it's got eyes, it's very real. So I think it was actually, for me, a genre that I don't particularly love, but actually it nailed it for me. I found it quite scary, as I say, and the idea that one day, could our world look like this, Ian? What did you think?
I liked it. It's very different because, as you say, the title makes you think there's going to be like a robot on a killing spree. Although there are some flashbacks where you wonder, did that happen? But it's mainly about this cyborg sort of having an existential crisis, I guess, and it's working for these sort of hippie colonists. And yeah, as you say, the issue is if the cyborg lets on that it's sort of escaped its programming, it'll be deactivated. So, but what's quite funny is that really, although it does wonder about humans and how weird they are, all this cyborg really wants to do is just watch episodes of this sci-fi soap opera, which you see clips of, which is very funny, called Sanctuary Moon, where one of the characters is saying to another one, "Did you sleep with that robot?" And it's great. So it's very different. It's very unusual. I mean, it reminds me slightly of, in Hitchhiker's Guide, there was Marvin, the paranoid android, who was a depressive robot because, as he said, I've got the brain the size of a planet, but no one ever asked me to do anything difficult. So yeah, it's really highly original and very different and unexpectedly good. We're going to move across to BBC iPlayer now for a new 2-part documentary from Chris Packham. The first part is called Inside Our ADHD Minds. It arrived on Monday the 12th of May, and here is a clip.
Neurodivergent people are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts. So I want to do everything I can to tackle this hidden crisis. And I'm starting with ADHD.
So you may remember that Chris Packham, who was diagnosed as an adult, I think he was in his 40s, as being autistic, he did a very good documentary called Inside Our ADHD Minds, where he gave some autistic people the opportunity to make a film that expressed how they experienced the world because of their neurodivergence, and then show it to their loved ones, and then we also as viewers gain a great understanding. And one of them was Ken Bruce's son, who the DJ, who's non-verbal. So it was very, very moving, very informative, and now he's back with 2 more documentaries. The first one looks at ADHD, and the second looks at dyslexia. And in fact, his stepdaughter, Megan, is also a broadcaster. She's dyslexic, so she features in that. This first one, so there's a young lad he's actually a tour guide in London, and he describes his ADHD. He creates this character called Tombola Man, because he says it's like someone just throwing balls at him all the time that are like these unwanted thoughts, and it's very effective actually. And then there's also a woman who wasn't like Chris, was well into her life when she got diagnosed, but looking back she sort of thinks I was always chopping and changing jobs, careers, and I was always like very kind of extrovert and loud, and thinking about how it had affected her relationship with her wife, and when they do the big reveal and they show the films to the family and friends, it's just incredibly moving. And I think Packham is really good at presenting this kind of show, because really he's just giving them the opportunity to tell their stories. He's not pontificating about the subject. And I would say go back and watch his original programme about autism, because it's a really excellent piece of TV. What did you think, Hannah?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think we all, we hear these, for want of a better term, labels all the time, don't we? And don't fully necessarily understand them unless you know somebody closely who has experienced, living with ADHD, for example, or autism or whatever it might be. So, and it's the fact that actually, and I think a lot of education systems now are identifying things significantly sooner. Our awareness is much greater, our understanding. But this sort of shines a different light on it, doesn't it? Because actually, as you say, with Jo, who's a council employee from Hertfordshire, she's 51 and she only received the diagnosis 2 years ago. And I think that her symptoms were amplified by the menopause. And we know that women are really, really good at hiding these symptoms for a really long time. And so actually, to shine a spotlight on that will help, I think, so many people, because they might identify with it and say, do you know what? That's me. I've always heard that. I've always found this. I've found this difficult. I'm difficult in a social situation, for example, or loud situations, or whatever it might be, whatever your trigger is. And there's absolutely help there. There's also alternative help there. I think a lot of people think, oh, I've just got down the medical route. I don't want to start taking, something and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And there's lots of options, and we're still learning. So I think that this is a really good thing to watch, and will help us all as societally, actually, to make a shift and a change. And allowances in some scenarios when it really just comes down to our ignorance and lack of understanding. So, yeah, really good. And I would agree, go back and watch, because it's very in-depth, isn't it? And it's quite it's quite emotional, I think, at times, to be honest with you.
Well, we're going to finish over on Channel 4 streaming with a new crime drama that arrived on Sunday, the 11th of May. It's called Long Bright River, and here's a clip.
I grew up here. Went to elementary school down the street. And so did a lot of the girls working the avenue today.
These women are good people. The men, they're a different story.
It's our job to protect them.
Yes, this is I say it's an unusual one for Channel 4. I don't know that it is unusual, but it's certainly quite different for Channel 4, I would say, in terms of it. My favourite word, I'm going to say it. It's really gritty, isn't it? It's a really gritty crime thriller. And this stars Amanda Seyfried. Now, she's obviously been in lots of different roles, but of course very well known for her very bubbly role in Mamma Mia as well as Mean Girls. And this is a really different role for her. In fact, actually, you do know it's her, but she looks different. Her hair's straight back. She's a police officer, and it's an adaptation from Liz Moore's 2020 hit novel, and it's an 8-parter. And this follows Amanda Seyfried, who plays the part of Mickey Fitzpatrick, who is a very sensitive and sort of she's a cop, as I say, but it's not just a day job for her. She's compassionate. She completely believes in what she does. And it focuses on something that we don't see a huge amount of in this country. Well, I haven't anyway seen a huge amount of it, but you certainly see friends of mine who are in LA, kind of this zombie drug, what's known as this zombie drug, where people take whatever it is, and they are just like zombies. They're rendered completely still. They look like they're not there. It's actually incredibly scary. And she's working in a very high crime area in Philadelphia, in the neighborhood of Kensington, Philadelphia, and they are trying to deal with this opioid crisis. And in episode 1, it goes straight there. It's quite dark scenery. As you'd imagine, it's a grey. She looks quite sort of harrowed quite quickly by everything. So you start with her, them going down the streets. There's a clear difference between her and her counterparts. He's talking about his relationships and his life, and just him really. And then she's going, oh, that's so and so, and that's so and so, and that's so and so on the streets. She knows their names. She's invested in the people that she's really trying to help. In this first episode, she's called to the scene of an overdose death. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's really horrid. You do see the dead person. it's absolutely grim. She opens her mouth and she says, "I think this is a homicide." And she says this is suspicious. No one else thought that, but she did. She went straight there. And then subsequently, multiple sex workers mysteriously turn up dead, and she's the one who wants to kind of find out what's going on, this very sinister pattern. And what you find out, and because she stops when she sees this dead person, she's absolutely terrified. She thought it was someone else, and she was worried it was her drug addict sister, Casey, and this is why she's so kind of invested in this particular story, this case. So I think she does an incredible job, actually. It's a really different part for her, and I think it's massively compelling. I watched the first episode, and I really, really enjoyed it. What did you think, Ian?
Well, it's been compared to Kate Winslet's Mayor of Easttown, which sort of in turn was compared to the brilliant Happy Valley with Sarah Lancashire. I would say it's not as good as either of those, but I like Seyfried in the role, and I like the setting of, the people who have sort of fallen through the cracks, living on the street, addicted to drugs, working in prostitution. It's an interesting side of Philadelphia. However, what I would say is, so she's got this new partner, and who's a sort of older guy who's joined the force because he used to work in construction. I didn't find him a very convincing character. He keeps questioning everything she does, and it just doesn't really convince. And then you're also getting flashbacks to her. It's that old trope, isn't it? What happened to your last partner? And we find out, because we see him in flashbacks, that's a much more successful relationship, I think. And he actually helps her out in this new investigation where she thinks that these people are actually being murdered. They're not just overdosing. So, and then again, the relationship with her son just feels to me like the sort of parent-child relationship that only a scriptwriter would dream up. It just didn't ring true for me. I don't know about you, Hannah, but there is definitely stuff to like about it, and as you say, it sure is gritty, but I think it has its flaws as well. Well, we've got to that time, Hannah. You find out what the hell you've been binge watching this week.
Well, do you know what? It's funny, isn't it? They say that social media can influence, and it certainly does. I've been back binging on Clarkson's Farm, and I've got to be honest with you, I do really like it. I really do. It's a bit of light entertainment, also some sadness, but some happiness. What have you been watching?
Well, ITV have been showing the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, which is so good. So, of course, featuring Christian Bale, Heath Ledger, Gary Oldman, the best of the Batman bunch, I would say. So, yeah, I've been enjoying those all over again. Now, we've just got time to look ahead to next week's offerings. So, what's on the agenda, Brenda?
Well, Rose Ayling-Ellis, Andrew Buchan and Charlotte Ritchie team up to bring down a criminal gang in 9TVX thriller Code of Silence.
And you'll be pleased to know, Hannah, that there's diddly squat going on, yes, as Clarkson's Farm returns on Prime Video. So we look forward to those and much, much more. But in the meantime, listeners, keep watching!
Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it. It began with the forging of the Great Rings. To celebrate the 300th episode of Verbal Diorama, a complete history and legacy of the film adaptations of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, including Ralph Bakshi's The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's celebrated The Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Kenji Kamiyama's The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Listen to the entire story in your podcast app of choice every Thursday in May by subscribing to Verbal Diorama, the podcast all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. For the time will soon come when hobbits will shape the fortunes of all.